At 0057 on October 5, 2025, over the city of Kstovo, Nizhny Novgorod Oblast, Russia, a Ukrainian PD-2 reconnaissance UAV had been quietly watching everything for hours. Hanging at 8,200 feet, every activity at Russia's fourth-largest oil refinery, Lukoil Nizhny Novgorod, was caught and catalogued. The USG-405 infrared camera platform slung under the PD-2's nose drew a precise map of the refinery complex, marking the entire lattice of storage tanks, pipelines, access gates, every vulnerable point. It streamed each attack point straight by Starlink satellite to a formation of 90 UAVs flying in, exactly 125 miles away. They had launched from rails strung along Ukraine's northeastern border the night before, each bird leaving the rail every 10 seconds on command. In that formation were 60 decoy UAVs completely rebuilt from commercial drones, refitted DJI Mavics, 10-inch frames using parts ordered on Alibaba, even racing drones and wooden fuselage UAVs joining the mission. From a concealed field command post in northeastern Kharkiv, the Strike Ops Team codename Nemesis 90, 412th Regiment, glued their eyes to the ops screens, tagging every rising heat signature on the tactical map. The targets, the refinery's primary tanks, stood out against the gray background, a 50-degree Fahrenheit temperature delta, a simple but fatal tell. The tanks were full. About 500,000 tons of oil sat inside 10-millimeter thin steel shells, one block of energy, a static bomb waiting. Neutralizing the refinery wasn't a reckless gambit, it had been calculated for weeks. The task group split into two roles. Ghost 1 would deploy decoy UAVs, while Ghost 2 guided the main strike package right behind. An encrypted attack order went out at once. The decoy swarm fanned, approaching from multiple axes and at every altitude. Their swollen steel silhouettes drank in every radar beam from Russia's early warning arrays. At 2:03, at Moscow's Air Defense Command, the long-range 91N6E radar crew panicked as their scopes filled not with an orderly numerical picture, but with a blizzard of unknown returns. The density was so extreme that for the first seconds, they thought the system had glitched. The decoy cloud sealed the sky from all directions and altitudes, building an electronic wall advancing into the radar's coverage. Like an invisible black hole, it swallowed the radar's attention, shielding the real strike, now exactly 12 miles out. Russian reaction wasn't slow. The S-400 battery fired. A salvo of 9 M96 interceptors broke from their tubes, while the 92 N6E engagement radar lit the targets, guiding each interceptor. INS on the interceptor noses locked onto the decoy swarm, rating them the greatest threat with zero suspicion. Seconds later, a string of short detonations boomed. Fireballs blossomed in the sky, swatting down decoys, their 10-inch frames, wooden fuselages, bargain shells tumbling in flames to the ground. But the night wasn't over for Russia. Another cluster blinked in from the western rim of the scope. At the 9S-18M1 radar post, a fresh attack order went out immediately. A Buck M2 battery dug in 9 miles from the refinery spat multiple 9M317 interceptors. The decoy flock fell inside the envelope. The Russian commander smirked as the fire control radar annotated each spinning prop in the air. No one in the Russian chain doubted their picture. They didn't know the real strike package still hid from air defenses worth hundreds of millions. The second interceptor salvo clawed skyward. Seconds later, more kills populated the command log. This was exactly the reaction Kiev's controllers wanted. Every interceptor fired marched Russia deeper into the real kill box. Each hit was a strategic loss. More important, each launch handed Ukrainian intelligence a priceless dataset, precise battery positions, radar bands. Russia mapped its own defenses. Battery commanders drafted and sent triumphant sit-reps to Moscow HQ, unaware they'd just made the worst decision of their careers. As the decoys exploded, the ingress corridor swung open like a lock clicked off. Only then did the true strike appear. Those mindless decoys were dirt cheap compared to the yield Kyiv was about to cash in. Ghost 1 had done its job. Russia had burned 40-plus interceptors and fixated multiple defense nodes. The game was now Ghost 2 versus the Refinery. No S-400, no book in the loop, just open space, and the strike drones sliding into it with the cold certainty of a problem already solved. The main spear point rode AN-196 Lyutie Kamikaze UAVs, range greater than 620 miles, each with a 77-pound TNT warhead. Silent death from across the border, as Russians call them. Greater than 2,200 pounds of explosives would be slashing through the short-range layer, the refinery's last real guard. Unlike the noisy decoys, the main package moved in secrecy under total EMCON. Holding a loiter approach, the 30 UAVs cruised 68 miles per hour at 165 feet AGL, hugging Earth's curve under the Russian early warning net. Terrain-following profiles plus minimalist composite skins with few flat facets let them shed radar reflections. To Russian scopes, they were just a flock of big migratory birds, too ambiguous to drive the alert level to max. Inside each shell, GNSS fed the INS and could fall back to autonomous behavior when signals died, basic ECCM. In short, jam GNSS and the drone still fights, like a soldier with the target memorized. At 2:25, 30 miles out, the world suddenly went dark. No GNSS, no satellite link, no direct orders from Ghost 2, only chaos. Ahead of the package, Russian EW stations were at full burn, an invisible wall draped over the sky. X-band rakes shredded anything electronic. One sweep across the formation and Kyiv's plan would collapse. But Ghost 2 didn't flinch. This was in the playbook. Within seconds, the UAV operators had stability back. On paper, the EW barrage had killed Ukraine's strike. In practice, Kyiv never steps into a fight without a backstop. Each kamikaze carried an AI visual odometry chip, terrain/target recognition for autonomous mission continuation in GPS-denied space. When GPS vanished, the swarm flipped to INS for course keeping, flicked the EO/IR cameras on for 3 seconds, off again, just enough to sight the field. The package kept absolute silence to avoid radar DF, while AN-196 number 7 pulsed a strobing peak that forced EW to spread its energy thinner. Now the target was plain. The 30 locked image tracks and drove on INS plus optics alone. No GPS, no uplink. Lukoil Nizhny Novgorod is one of Russia's 4 largest refineries. 16 million tons per year, 46,000 tons per day flowing straight into the fuel bloodstream. Put differently, a year's output could light 70+ million households, the equivalent of 20 Moscows glowing for 12 months. Rows of tanks, from crude to finished product, had been topped off minutes earlier, and a single decisive blow into the tank farm would send 500,000 tons into instant vapor. Not a bomb, not a battery, just millions of tons of fuel vaporizing in the wrong place. The southwest spine of Russia's refining network would seize up at once, 10% of the population facing a brutal choice in the oncoming winter: shiver in the cold, or warm by dry wood and whispered prayers. Crossing the IP, the autopilots locked attack lanes to discrete targets, data refreshed 20 times per minute, coordinates pinned to the centimeter. Engines screamed. The formation surged to 93 miles per hour while splitting into sub-packages. Only now did Russia's short-range defenses sense what was coming. Pulse Doppler sets on Panzer S finally began to tick. Crews jolted as their birds morphed into something moving at impossible speed. The all targets intercepted message announced seconds earlier made operators hesitate. The dual-band 1RS-2-1 sets spun up and 30mm streams were thrown at the swarm. But it was too late. Time had become Panzer's biggest enemy. 5,000 rounds per minute walls of 30mm fire now only burned Russia's money in a desperate losing intercept. Exactly 2:55. The first 10 AN-196s dived into the crude tank farm, where internal pressure ran highest. The initial blast bloomed. Milliseconds later, the detonation rolled across the complex as the first attack cluster chewed its target with exploding steel jaws. Flames spread faster than any simulation. Gushing oil traced chain-lit fuses, one secondary hammering into the next. The sound no longer warned. It patterned the disaster. Boom, shudder, collapse. Tanks, side by side, under heat and pressure, failed in sequence. Shop roofs tore, gantries crashed, tank shells skipped their pedestals. The fire, a beast, ate everything along its path. The next 10 hit the intermediate processing and distribution pump blocks, where the pipe network and mechanicals concentrate. Overpressure from the first strike crazed concrete, snapped runs, and turned pipe fractures into fire fountains. 2 unmanned aerial vehicles speared the main trunk line. The remainder tore into distillation towers and manifold banks. In under 3 minutes, the complex's circulatory system was severed. Fire chased along steel runs, sketching an incandescent gash kilometers long. From afar, a scythe of flame across the plant. The final 10 approached the finished product tank farm, holding greater than 500,000 tons of refined fuel. They held low, then pitched over together. In a breath, 5 tanks detonated in series, throwing a shock comparable to hundreds of tons of industrial explosive. Heat and pressure punched air outward. Shock waves marched for dozens of kilometers. Remaining tanks reached their limits, then one by one ruptured. Blasts propagated like a heartbeat from a dying leviathan. Fire drowned the entire complex, hundreds of meters tall, mirrored in the Volga. Satellite thermal sensors captured a luminous smear greater than 7 miles wide, the signature of a regional-scale industrial eruption. Internal fire systems collapsed, power failed, comms stuttered and died. From monitoring posts hundreds of kilometers away, the blaze showed as a red continent on the national energy map, a hotspot in the purest sense. Local fire brigades charged in, but met an enemy water and foam wouldn't quickly tame. Pump stations were down, power feeds cut, several approach lanes had burned out, making entry both dangerous and slow. Response teams tried to ring-fence the fire, shielding residential quarters and blocking spread to other volatile stores, but the scale had blown past normal response capacity. At command level, damage reports ticked up by the minute. Infrastructure losses, production collapse, risk to strategic stocks. Political decisions followed. Emergency notices, selective evacuations, spinning up alternate fuel distribution nodes. Yet immediate scarcity began to bite. Local fuel prices spiked, factories and transport throttled back. The logistics lattice bowed under massive strain. One of Russia's 4 flagship oil and fuel works lay prostrate, despite Moscow's efforts to smother the truth. Nemesis 90 packed the gear, left the covert bunker, and disappeared into silence. Mission completed.